Welcome back to Not for Pie Eaters. I'm John Dougal. We're currently in a series on how modern society has adversely affected intrinsic masculinity and intrinsic femininity. At the end of this presentation, there will be a link to those videos that kicked off the series. Today we're going to look at the rise in obesity and the lifestyle that you'll need in order to combat that. 60 years ago, we didn't have an obesity problem. And for several decades now, we've had nothing but fad after fad after fad. You know, there's diets like paleo and keto and fad exercise routines, and none of these things have put a dent in the ever-increasing problem. There's clearly something in the effort that's missing. What is it? And today we're going to look at obesity from a completely different angle. And I'll be frank, I've seen very little information on the take that I'll present today, but I'm convinced that there are a couple of root problems that are not being addressed. And in my estimation, the poor diet and the lack of exercise are merely symptoms of the root problems. I came across an article recently in Men's Health titled, "The Real Reason Americans Are So Fat." It's a little bit misleading because their reasons aren't exactly the same as what I believe, but there's some useful information in the article. It lists the top 10 sources for calories in a U.S. diet, and I'll include a link to that article in the description. The top 10 are grain-based desserts like cakes, cookies, and donuts, yeast breads, which are high in sugar, chicken and chicken dishes, soda and sports drinks, pizza, alcoholic beverages, pasta and pasta dishes, Mexican dishes, which are high in fat, salt, and carbs, beef and beef dishes, and then dairy desserts like ice cream and cheesecake. Well, what motivates us to eat cakes, cookies, donuts, bread, pizza, and cheesecake? You know, and what motivates us to drink soda and sports drinks and to consume alcohol? You know, at least 6 of the top 10 are high in fat, salt, and sugar. And we eat these things and we drink the alcohol to try to feel better. These things are comforting. And my hypothesis is that we want these comforting things because we're unhappy. General unhappiness is the root problem that pushes us towards these things. And ongoing unhappiness drives us to ingrained bad habits. The ongoing unhappiness saps our energy and our will to exercise. Well, how can we prove this hypothesis? Maybe not prove it, but at least give some credibility to it. Of the two sexes, women's feelings are stronger than men's. Therefore, women exhibit a higher incidence of negative emotion than men do, which includes the signs of general unhappiness. The 4 major negative emotions are anxiety, depression, hostility, and fear. And people tend to reach out for some sort of quick fix for anxiety and depression. Anxiety is brutal, and it understandably triggers escapism and a reach for like drugs and alcohol. Depression and general unhappiness can also trigger a desire for a quick fix. And this is where I believe we reach out towards comforting foods that are fatty, salty, and sugary. These foods trigger a dopamine response, one of the happy hormones, you know, and we eat these things to feel better for a moment. Weight gain happens when we regularly eat these things, this garbage food, and when we drink alcohol. We can try to change our diets, and it may work for a while, but our resolve is at war with our unhappiness, and it doesn't cure the root problem. If unhappiness is the root problem, we ought to be able to find data that supports this hypothesis. Well, in March of 2023, Forbes ranked the happiest nations in the world. Finland came in at number 1, USA came in at number 15. And so these top 15 nations, I guess you could say. I looked for data for these, and I went to Wikipedia to look at the average body mass index for these nations to see if there's a correlation between happiness or unhappiness and weight gain. Well, here's the chart. Women in the happiest nations tend to be trimmer, but they gain weight as happiness decreases, as demonstrated by the less happy nations. Let me explain the chart a little bit. The vertical scale is body mass index, and the horizontal scale is the body mass index rank from the article by nation. Well, if you focus on the 5 heaviest nations, they all have an average body mass index greater than or equal to 26.8, and they all rank poorly on unhappiness. So you can see to the left, the happy nations are trimmer. To the right, the unhappy nations are heavier. Well, nearly 18% of adult women in the United States used antidepressant medication between 2015 and 2018, according to the CDC. Well, clearly American women are unhappy, and they eat too much salty, fatty, and sugary foods. They drink too much wine. Unhappiness and weight gain has been a trend for several decades now, as the chart on the screen shows. The data is from the CDC, as presented in an article from a website called Conservative Papers. The article's titled, "The Average American Woman Now Weighs as Much as the Average 1960s Man." The purple line is for men, and the turquoise-colored line is for women. And you can see the trend is just ever-increasing weight for the last 50 years, up till the chart ends at 2010. Well, in 1960, the average man weighed 166 pounds, and the average woman weighed 140 pounds. That's not too bad for averages, considering, the adult age ranges. So it's easy to picture, 1960s adults in the 20 to 35 age range as being trim. Well, in 2023, these weight averages are 200 pounds for a man and 170 pounds for a woman. And so clearly something's changed. So let's focus in on these weights of these average men and women. Picture a 5'9" man today. He weighs 200 pounds. Johnny Depp is slightly taller than this height, but he'd need to add an extra 30 pounds to hit 200. So picture Johnny with a 30-pound beach belly. Does that image to you look healthy? Okay. Now picture a 5'3.5" average woman who weighs 171 pounds. Scarlett Johansson is about this height. So now picture her, but you'd have to add 50 pounds to her current weight. And women carry weight on their thighs and buttocks, and then it spreads everywhere else after that. Well, thunder thighs isn't even a close description of the mental image of trying to put 50 pounds on Scarlett Johansson. In 1960 and earlier, people didn't move around as much. There were better community ties. People knew the neighbors. They socialized regularly. And these ties satisfied our need for connecting. And in years past, family was community, and family and church and those sorts of things. Well, the kids' activities, were, especially with the sports, are social and recreational. And there wasn't this frantic and expensive needs for kids to shine like today. And parents shared the effort with other parents. So both the kids and the parents experience connecting around that kind of a community tie. And I key in on sports, but it's a lot of things. There are all kinds of community events, Kiwanis clubs, and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and like I said, with church ties and things. Well, there was these shared responsibilities, and so the parents experienced more freedom, and the kids experienced freedom from the parents and learned to be a bit more independent in a safe and controlled way. Well, the kids also experience power by learning how to achieve and how to be independent. Okay, now switch gears just for a minute for family time. You know, you have to kind of go way back in this because a trend was set from the Great Depression onward, and this idea of economizing. Right now we might feel like we don't have enough money, but we're affluent compared to the 1930s after the Depression. Well, that period created this sort of mindset of like, hey, you do things yourself. You cook home cooked meals. You grow vegetables in the garden. In World War II, everybody planted victory gardens to try to help with the war effort, and that trend carried on, through the 50s and 60s, and eventually as life got more hectic and as more and more women went into the workforce, things changed. But back then, meals were a social time, obviously within the family, but also having neighbors over and neighborhood kids. And so the happy hormones were released by the socializing and by eating good food, from basic ingredients, not fatty, salty, and sugary food. And today it's, with everybody working, both, mom and dad, it's easy to be frazzled when it comes to all the other work, at home that needs to be done. And so, that's how it goes. So what do people do today? They go out to eat a whole lot more often. They grab a sugary Starbucks coffee every morning. They go to Taco Bell when they're running errands just to gobble down something fatty, sugary, and salty. And then when they get home, people eat in front of the TV. That didn't happen. That wasn't a 1960s norm. If you could get a time machine and go back to that time period, people would be horrified if that's what you did. Well, those were good habits back then because no one watched TV during dinner and there wasn't computers and social media and TikTok and Instagram. So, the norm today is to make food convenient and eat crappy food and get a cheap dopamine hit. So the $1 million question is, do you have to conform? You go back to the happy hormone video. Some of these things are so easy. Get 8 hours sleep a night, get regular exercise, walk outside when it's sunny, listen to music while you're working or exercising, and then accomplish stuff regularly, starting with simple things like making your bed in the morning. And then be patient. The desire for cookies, cake, soda, pizza, cheesecake, and alcohol, it'll diminish in time as your happy hormones just naturally fill that gap and you become a happier person. And it all boils down to how do you want to live. Today's wisdom quote is a portion of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood and I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's topic. Over the next several weeks, we'll be covering lots of similar societal norms and where the group path has taken a wrong turn, and where your best life falls in a different direction. The videos that kicked off the series are on the screen, The Intrinsic Man and The Intrinsic Woman. I hope you've had a chance to see them. Cheers.